let's jump right into it. And again, sometimes my speakers have an issue here, so hopefully they won't be going in and out. So first of all, thank you everyone for taking some time out today. We're going to look at insurance a little bit different than what you may have been used to. And for the record, I've worked with over about 100 clients, and Lawrence Township is the first client I've ever had ask me to discuss benefits or discuss the financing of the plan. That's just a credit to your insurance committee as far as a collaboration between all the units involved. So hopefully today it won't be too far. I tried to make it as simple as possible, but after our conversation, hopefully it'll make sense. Some of the messaging that you get in and year out during the year, during open enrollment, from your committee members, from folks like myself, might make sense. Because at the end of the day, there's so many people involved, so many components involved to the insurance plan. The reality is that you as the members are the most critical. You guys drive exactly where this goes. So during our last committee meeting, someone suggested, hey, you know what, why don't we have a conversation to let people know how we actually pay our bills. So that's what we're going to go over today. If you have any questions after this, feel free to shoot over to Bridget, and then we'll work together to get those answers over to you. Okay, so we'll give you a quick introduction, rudimentary on different types of insurance plans, fully insured versus partially self-funded. That's what we are. Give you an idea of how the carriers renew your calculate your renewal, and then what you can do and what your peers can do to help maintain these costs, stop the rising tide of rising costs, and we'll leave some time for questions and answers afterwards. Okay. So when we say funding the plan is pretty simple, is how are we paying our bills, right? So where does the money come from, and how do we pay our bills? Okay. So a couple of things that majority of us are used to what's called a fully insured contract. This is pretty similar or exactly similar to how your car insurance works. Every month you pay a premium, or you may pay it once every 6 months. And if you have any claims, they just go against your plan. You pay fixed cost every single month, and then the insurance company will pick up any claims. So there's no fluctuation month over month of what your claims are. With partially self-funded, many large employers such as Lawrence Township choose this type of program. And what this is when the employer pays for their own medical claims directly. And while a third-party administrator, you may have heard that term in the past, a third-party administrator. In our case, it's United Healthcare. They are a administrator that we have contracted with to let us use their network, pay the claims to the doctors, etc. Okay. Also, as far as issuing ID cards, any type of customer questions you may have, and then there's also stop loss. And I'll talk a little bit about the stop loss. This is something that I'm going to guess that 99% of the population doesn't know what stop loss is or how it works for Lawrence Township. So Lawrence Township actually has what's called a stop loss limit. That's a deductible within the plan, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that in a moment here. But how that works is the insurance company is going to pick up any claims above that individual stop loss. Okay, so if the claims are lower than predicted, we can save money. So what happens is every year, the insurance carriers will look at the number of claims that we have. They'll add a medical rate to that, and then they'll trend that forward. And they'll give us a proposed budget. And usually they're pretty spot on. They're typically going to be within a couple points of predicting it. So what we try to do is we monitor these claims on a monthly basis. So this way we have a general idea of what our renewal is going to be well in advance. So if we need to start making any changes, such as plan changes, any type of funding changes, things along those lines, we can do that. Okay. So again, the fully insured fundamentals. So we're pretty comfortable and pretty familiar with this, how this works. You pay premium to an insurance carrier. We just give them the money, and we have no idea how much we've had in claims or anything along those lines. If our claims come in at zero, they still get the premium. How is partially self-funding different? Self-funding is different because it's the employer's money. In this case, it's a combination of the administration money and your employee contributions are your paycheck, which is used to pay for the medical claims, not the insurance company. So our claims are paid directly from what the administration sets aside in combination with your employee contributions. Okay, so for example, if our claims come in lower, we get a lower renewal, we don't have to make such an adjustment on our contributions or to our plans. Okay, so the majority of the cost of your plan is variable. And what that means is because your claims are going to fluctuate month to month, and this is something that we look at with your insurance committee on a month-to-month basis. Okay, so every single month our claims might be higher. So last year when we had during the COVID pandemic, when it first started, we had what was called claims avoidance. So our claims went down for a couple of months, but then they evened out throughout the year. Okay, so this is the main difference between what you may be used to as far as insurance and how Lawrence Township's works. Our claims are going to fluctuate month to month, and we pay those claims based off of what the school district sets aside, and your employee contributions goes in a pot and pays the claims. The only thing that's going to be a fixed cost are what we call our fixed fees. Okay, and those are going to fluctuate only if your enrollment fluctuates. So, for example, we may have 1,300 subscribers. Subscribers are employees covered on the plan. We're not including dependents. We're not including your spouses or children. So what's going to stay pretty static throughout the year is your administrative fees. So we pay UHC to process our claims, to rent their network, for managed care case management. What that means, if I'm a cancer patient, I go into the UHC case management program, disease management. Our RX program, we're renting their pharmacy, what's called a pharmacy benefit manager, and then the stop loss interface, which I'll talk a little bit about that next. Below that, you'll see you have a specific stop loss. This is based off of every individual that's covered under the Lawrence Township plan. That includes employees that are covered, plus their dependents. So Lawrence Township is responsible for all claims at every member until the deductible is met. That's our stop loss. In the case of Lawrence Township, our stop loss limit is $250,000. So what does that mean? That means if I'm an employee and I'm covered under Lawrence Township medical plan, I have my deductible. Let's say I'm in the $3,000 HSA. I pay my first $3,000. I'm covered at 100%. Any claim from $3,001 to $250,000 is paid by Lawrence Township. If for some reason I have a claim that's $300,000 or $400,000, then Lawrence Township has a policy that covers for claims above the $250,000 mark. Does everyone understand that? So basically, there's a deductible that Lawrence Township has that kicks in after $250,000. So every claim paid between your deductible or your max out of pocket up to $250,000 is paid by Lawrence Township. And those are usually done on a weekly basis. So typically every week, Lawrence Township will get a notice from United Healthcare saying, hey, in X number of days, you had so many claims, we need to pull this amount of money out. Anybody have any questions on the stop loss? All right. So when you look at the other fixed fee that we have is called an aggregate stop loss. Okay. What that means is we're going to get a projected claim factor. So United Healthcare will look at our claims and they'll say, okay, Lawrence Township, we estimate your claims to be ABC or 1, 2, 3. We purchase insurance to cover us under a worst case scenario. So in a worst case scenario, we have what's called aggregate stop loss. That is 20% above what the expected claims amount is. So for example, if United Healthcare says, we anticipate you to have $20 million worth of medical and RX claims, the most that we can pay, because we have aggregate stop loss, is 20% above that, which would be another $4 million. So our worst case scenario is $24 million in that case. Okay, so we have to fund an account to make sure that we have enough under a worst case scenario. Okay, that makes sense to everybody? So the only fixed fees that fluctuate are these three fees here: your admin fees, your specific stop loss, and your aggregate stop loss. And then I'll show you exactly how much do these fixed fees comprise of your overall program. And you'll see where the bulk of the expenses. Okay. So I'm a very visual person. I like to see things written down. So under a fully insured program, give you an example. We have Lawrence Township. We pay a fixed premium. That premium is comprised of employer and employee contributions. We pay that to UHC. Employees go to the doctor, dependents go to the doctor, claims are paid, healthcare providers. That's it. If, for example, UHC says that our claims are going to be X and they come in at X plus Y, we're not going to.
Can you clean out the litter box, please?
We're not going to pay more than what the fixed premium is. Typical, again, like your car insurance, okay? How we work is when we're self-funded, it looks a lot more complicated, okay? But it's really not. What we're doing is taking those fixed fees and just kind of spreading them out. So on the left-hand side, you'll see here, you have Lawrence Township. We have a claims account. That's going to be our reserve account. That reserve account is comprised of the employee and employer contributions. So how much you pay out of your paycheck, every paycheck for your insurance goes into a bucket. At the same time, Lawrence Township takes a portion of that of their budget and puts that into the bucket. Okay, we pay United Healthcare a fee, a fixed fee based off of our enrollment, to allow us to use their network for any case management, disease management, our RX program. So we're basically renting their network. Okay. Over here, what you'll see is I have it highlighted in red. This is you as the employee. You go to the doctor, you go to a provider, you have a claim, that gets paid. Okay. The reason why I highlighted this in red, you'll see in a couple minutes later, this is the most important component of the entire program. Okay. So we have our claims, gets paid to the provider. I mentioned the stop loss earlier. If, for example, we have a claim that comes in over $250,000, let's say it comes into $500,000, anything above that 250 goes right back into the bucket. Okay. And I mentioned earlier that we have aggregate, which is our worst case scenario, which is 20% above what the insurance company expects us to spend. Anything that goes above that 20% goes back into this bucket. Okay. So if our claims here come in lower than our expected, then this claims account has a higher amount in it, higher reserve. Okay. We have more money to pay the claims. If these claim payments come in higher than our anticipated, that's when we have to make adjustments to this box down here, the claims account, either through employee and employer contributions or through plan changes, etc. Okay. Does that make sense? So while this looks, there's a lot of arrows, a lot of boxes going around, it works very similar to this. We're just breaking this down in a couple more components here. So you have Lawrence Township, we're renting the UHC network. We take our employee and employer contributions on a weekly basis. Our claims get sent to UHC. We pay those, goes to healthcare provider. Anybody over 200, we pay all claims up to $250,000. Anything over goes back into the claims account. Under a worst case scenario, if the entire group is running poorly, we have protection up to 20% above what is expected. That amount goes back into the claims bucket. Does that make sense? Does anybody need to talk about that a little bit more? Have you guys ever seen this before? Are you from at all? Did you know that this is how the insurance plan works?
Yeah, I think most do not understand.
Yeah, seriously, George, I'm on the committee and I have literally had I think I was new here. This helps so much. And I don't think that anyone understands it and or knows that this is how it works. So this is why I just, this was so needed and so appreciated.
Yeah, and like I said, it's only about 10 slides. I thought this was going to be a lot easier to put together, but like I said, I've never had to do this for over 100 employers. So that's a credit to your committee that you said, hey, you know what? I think this is great that people know this is how the insurance works, right? So
Yeah.
sometimes the biggest surprise that people have is that the school district is going to pay for every claim up to $250,000 per person. So if it's myself, my spouse,
Mhm.
each one of us is covered for Orange Township is going to pay for up to $250,000. And where does that $250,000 come from? A combination of the budget as well as employee contributions. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
This is really helpful.
Right. And that's why it's so important for people to realize that, we're paying the claims. And so it's so important if you can, they offer, different items on the UHC website that we're going to talk about next month in May, but they offer, their website shows how you can find cost claims for cost comparison for prescriptions, looking for providers, and how even, MRIs or x-rays can cost between $500 and $2,000 in difference, depending on where you go. And so shopping around, just like you would for a car or a television, right, is what we're doing here for medical insurance. And so they make it a little bit easier when you can use the app or the website, but just teaching people this is where you can go to learn, because it really stinks whenever you get a bill in the mail and you had no idea that that was going to be the cost. So it's nice to be able to go look on the website and find those cost finders prior to your appointment. And just knowing that all of our claims are being paid by the district, of course, until we get to the stop loss piece, is a huge thing for folks to know, because then you kind of understand why sometimes our premium is being increased, because our projected cost for the year, is in excess of that. Thank you, George.
Yeah, thank you, George, and thank you, Bridget, for all that you do always.
So one of the conversations we have, well, obviously you guys were with Anthem for a while, right? And we switched to UHC. So why did we switch from Anthem to UHC? When we look back at this slide here, okay, we were able to get lower and better administrative fees, better stop loss, and better aggregate stop loss, okay? And we were able to match the network as much as possible. And we were on the customer service side, there were some issues, etc. Okay. Additionally, when an employee goes to a healthcare provider, there is going to be a difference between network discounts. So there could be a 1 or 2% savings on a UHC claim. While to you it may not seem a lot, right? So if I'm spending $100 on something and all of a sudden it's $99, that may not seem a lot to you, but when you multiply that by 3,000 people going to the doctor or going for prescriptions, that could add up into nearly $1 million at the end of the day. So again, you'll see why I highlighted this claims payment in red, right? Because at the end of the day, you have all these different components, but this is the driver of where our renewals, right? So every year we look at a renewal and say, hey, we got a good renewal, we got a bad renewal. And you'll see that these fixed claims that we're paying to UHC are a very small portion of your overall expense, okay? But this is the biggest portion right here that dictates when your insurance committee or when Bridget sends out open enrollment information, we can say, hey, our plan changed, or our plan didn't change, your contributions changed, your contributions didn't change. It's because these numbers came in favorable, okay? So I talked a little bit about our renewal. So how is your renewal actually calculated? So they're going to use what's called historical data, and they're going to punch it into their calculators. So they'll look at, where does the data come from? We get monthly claim reports that we review with your insurance committee, and I'm going to show you what the first slide of that looks like. They'll go through, for example, if we have large claimants, we consider large claimants to be anybody over $50,000. They'll look at the diagnosis of that. They'll project your claims costs going forward. So for example, if the last couple of years our claims have come in higher than expected, they have to add that in, take that into account. Medical trend alone is roughly about 5 to 6%. What does that mean? So if I go to facility A have procedure B done in 2021, facility A, procedure B in 2022 is going to go up nationwide by about 5 to 6%. That's not United Healthcare charging us more. That's the facility or the provider charging us more. That's the average. So you have to take that into account. So when we're looking at 2022, we already know that we're expecting a 5 to 6% medical trend increase. So to offset that, that's why we have the wellness programs. That's why we have health savings accounts, things along those lines. That's why you get inundated with Bridget sending out, hey, get your wellness, get your preventive care, things like along those lines. Because we're fighting every single year 5 to 6%. So if the insurance company says you're going to spend $20 million, that we know if we do nothing and our claims come in exactly at $20 million, the following year, if our enrollment stays the same, we're going to spend about $21 million, right? So we know, and we have to battle that every single year, okay? So, and then of course you have your maximum claim cost. That was that aggregate I told you about. So we also have to fund for a worst case scenario. The last thing you want, and it does happen, it's very rare. You may have come across articles in the past that said organization ABC did not have enough money to pay their claims. That has happened, okay? So we have to fund under a worst case scenario, right? Because remember, we're paying $250,000 per person, up to $250,000. We're getting a projected claim cost. And on top of that, we have another policy that covers us for anything over 20% of that projected. So we like to fund up to that 20%. So when you do go to the doctor, the doctor calls you up and doesn't say, hey, I didn't get paid from United Healthcare. Well, if United Healthcare didn't pay them, that means that Lawrence Township didn't have the money to pay them. And why is that? Because that means that this claims account gets drained, right? If these claims go too high, above what we expect, this claims account gets drained. And where does that money come from? That comes from your contributions as an employee and what the district can set aside. Okay, so that's how your renewal is calculated. They take your experience, your claimed experience, they trend it forward. If you have any large claimants, they'll take that to account and they'll give us a maximum worst case scenario. And that's where we sit down with your committee and say, what do we need to do? How can we manage this for the upcoming year? And hopefully we can come out to you guys during open enrollment and say, you guys did a great job, keep it up, no changes, etc. Any questions on that portion there? All right. So this is a report, a lot of numbers here. This is a report that we review monthly with your insurance committee. I'm going to blow it up a little bit here. This gives you a general idea. This is data through, this is your actual data through the first two the policy year. So you can see here for 2019, we were expected to spend $17,759,000. We had 1,305 employees plus our dependents. We came in slightly below that, $16,758,000, right? So we ran at about 5.6 below what was anticipated. Here's your annual per employee per year. See, last year we were anticipated to spend $17,237,000. And you see where it says 101.2. That means that we ran. That means I'm trying not to use insurance committee verbiage here. That means when we're at 101.2, that means that our claims came in 1.2% higher than was anticipated. Okay. So through the year right now, we're running at 85.6. You say that's great. Well, a factor in that is that it's the beginning of the contract year, right? And remember, Lawrence Township doesn't pick up claims until after you've hit your deductible, right? So this number will rise throughout the year. What we try to do as an insurance committee is stay ahead of it and make sure that we don't go too far over that expected amount there. But this gives you an idea of what we spend per employee per year. Okay, so there was about a 6% increase in claims from the last year. I mentioned earlier that we look at large claimants. Under this year, we have claimants over 75,000. Let me move something over here. I like this pie chart down here. So if you remember, I highlighted this red portion here, claims payment. Well, what does that mean? That claims payment, when you look at our total expense, when you add this up, it comes out to 100%. 66% of our cost is in medical claims. That's inpatient, outpatient, doctor's office visits. 18% is in your RX claims. That's your prescription drugs. 16% of our total cost is in what I was mentioning earlier, the fixed fees. 11% of that is going to be that stop loss. That's that separate policy that we have built internally to cover our employees, to cover Lawrence Township for claims over $250,000. This is your aggregate. That's that worst case scenario. You can see here that amount's very low because it's very rare that a group such as yourself will hit that maximum. But again, we have to fund for that. PCORI, that's an ACA fee that we pay. This is the clinic, the on-site clinic. Through the first couple months, we're about just under 40,000. So, and then down here is ASO. That's administrative services only. This is what we've paid to United Healthcare year to date in order to process our claims. So this way we're not sending it. This is for all that right here. The PPO network, the disease management, the RX program, the stop loss, the wellness, or anything that Bridget mentioned. There's data integration, the wellness program, things such as the application. So at the end of the day, about 2% of our overall cost is going to UHC just to administer the plan. About 84%, and this number is going to get bigger. This number gets smaller as the year goes on. This number gets bigger, okay? And why is that? Because we're still early in the contract. These claims will go up, and this pie will become bigger. Roughly about 90%, give or take, 88 to 90%. So 84% of our overall cost year to date, which we're at $1.3 million, just under $1.3 million, 84% of that is comprised of your medical claims and your RX claims. That's when you went to the doctor, that's when you got your prescription, anything over deductible. Does that make sense? So this is what we look at every single month. With your, we have the ability, we know what the carrier's formulas are going to be, so we're able to project your renewal prior to your renewal actually coming in. So we actually start talking about your renewal in June. That's when we start having what we call our pre-renewal meeting with your insurance committee. At that point, we sit down and say, okay, if your policy was issued, if your renewal was issued today, here's what your renewal would be. Okay, so your renewal, even though it's a February 1st through January 31st effective date, the actual renewal period for your policy is from August 1st through July 31st, right? So when we meet in June, there's only 2 more months left of what we call the snapshot. Or is it pretty easy to follow along? I'm going to take the silence as we're good. All right.
You're good, George.
So I like to use, if you guys have seen me at some of your open enrollment meetings, I always use, and Bridget, you used the example, what can you do, right? What can you do as a member of the plan? Again, all this can seem overwhelming. You have Lawrence Township involved, you have the carriers involved, you have the providers involved, you have stop loss, you have insurance agents, you have doctors, everything. The most important component of your plan is this right here. And this is where you guys come into play. So what can you do to help influence this here, your renewal, right? Because as we mentioned, over 80% of your cost is in your claims. That's every time I go to the doctor, every time I go to the hospital. If I could save some money there, whether it's asking the right questions, whether it's shopping around for the best rate, MRIs don't cost the same at every single facility. X-rays don't cost the same at every single facility. Certain pharmacies will have their prescription drugs may cost more at one and less at the other. So take what you do in your everyday life and apply that towards your healthcare, right? So that's probably one of the most used lines I always say during open enrollment. Just take what you do every single day, right? If you're going to buy a car, we don't just walk into the dealership, give the dealer a blank check and say, hey, I want that blue car over there, right? What are you going to do? You're going to go search online. You're going to, hey, I'm looking to buy a Dodge. I'm looking to buy a refrigerator. Which is the best refrigerator? I'm going to go to bestbuy.com. I'm going to read all the reviews. You don't have to do that much with your healthcare. It's pretty simple. If you go onto the application, on the My UHC app, it'll actually tell you, I'm going in for an MRI. Here's how much it's going to cost typically within these certain facilities within your home or wherever you're going to get it at, right? I can go on there and I can look at, for example, how much is my prescription drug going to cost? If I'm on a prescription drug and I want to go to CVS, maybe I'll call Walgreens and say, how much is it over there? If it saves me $5, why wouldn't I do that? Because you're going to do the same thing with regards to every other aspect of your life, right? So the main thing you need to do is understand how it works, right? Understand how your insurance works, how deductibles work, how co-insurance works, how the RX program works. I would definitely take some time out, talk to your co-workers, talk to your spouses and say, hey, jump on a call on May 6th, and they're going to give you a pretty in-depth tutorial on myuhc.com, right, on the app. You want to maximize your benefits, right? So if you're on the HSA, if you can, fund that with pre-tax dollars. Take advantage of the My Wellness program at Lawrence Township, which you guys have done an amazing job as far as your participation. I've never had a group that had as many people participating in a wellness program as much as you guys have. So maximize that benefit by jumping onto the My Wellness program. Ask for pricing transparency. So for example, I mentioned you can talk to your facilities and say, how much is this MRI that you're sending me? How much is it going to cost? Doctor says, I don't know. Well, let me go on my app real quick, check it out. And I could actually say, well, you know what? I found it cheaper at this other facility. Can you recommend that one? Can you do that one? They'll do that. That also goes into shopping around for services. We talked about that. That's the most important thing, is shop around. Take what you do in your everyday life and apply it towards your health insurance. And then again, don't skip the preventive care. You guys have done a great job on that. So especially with last year, there was so much claims avoidance where people, we physically couldn't go to the doctor for certain things, right? If you put something off due to COVID last year, and you're comfortable enough going back to the doctor, please take that time and reschedule that. The last thing we want is for, if you are a borderline condition, for that to escalate and you happen to be sicker or being off work or anything along those lines, okay? So as of right now, whoever's on the phone, whoever's on this call is probably in the top 99% as far as how insurance works, believe it or not. Like I said, I've never had this conversation open with employer groups. Obviously with insurance committees we do, but you guys are about top 99% as far as experts on insurance. So you guys hopefully learned something new today. Does anybody have any questions?
Let me see if there's anything in the chat here, George. Just comments about shopping around.
Bridget, I have an email from a teacher who wasn't able to join. I'm gonna try to find her question, but
Everyone's very thankful.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, George. I know I came in late. When we asked you to do this, you were really excited and got on it right away. And thank you so much for doing it. I'm so glad it was taped. Justin and I had PCG with Dr. Smith, so we didn't get finished with that till about 5:25. But thank you so much for coming in and taking the time to share this knowledge with our teachers. It's greatly appreciated.
Oh, absolutely. I love doing it. I'm an insurance nerd, as you guys know, and then knowledge, right? You guys, this is what you do for a living. Knowledge is power, right? If you know how this thing works, and you know that the most important component is this red claims payment, and it's coming from your contributions and what the district can set aside. Hopefully, we can continue having a positive program going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Before
Okay.
slapping me over the
And
head
hey,
because we
your the speakers work today. Yay. Okay. One of our teachers sent an email, but I think it comes back to the self-funding portion. So she asked, why is it that we pay so much for insurance, but our coverage is different? I worked in another district, had paid about the same in premiums, but had a lot, like she's just kind of saying like, felt like a lot of things were covered more or differently. I don't know if that's.
Well, without seeing the plan itself. So, one of the questions can be, why is, so she's asking, why am I paying so much out of my paycheck when I don't think I'm getting as much of a benefit as I would somewhere else? Well, we don't know what the plan looks like. Additionally, I will say that you guys have done, I've been with you guys now for going into 6 or 7 years. There hasn't been a whole lot of change to your plans. I know we've had to tweak the PPO plans, but your HSAs have stayed pretty much the same. Why would that happen? Is because if this claims account, right, if our claims come in higher than expected, right, adjustments need to be made.
Mm-hmm.
And those adjustments are going to come from one of two places, and that they can only come from one of two places, either through this claims account, which is what you as the employee, and or through the plan design. There's nowhere else that we can come up with the money. So again, because the majority of your cost is in your claims, right?
Yeah.
What are we paying
Yes.
UHC? People may think, well, we're paying UHC all this money. So you're actually, through the first 2 months, to use their network process of claims, this number won't change. This number stayed about 2%. So 2% of your cost is just, and that was the same thing with Anthem, right? 2% of your cost is just for the processing of your claims.
Mm-hmm.
This is the big. So it could vary. One group can vary to another group. So one thing we can't control is these large claimants over here, right? So
Sure.
One group may have more large, where another group may not have large claimants, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's why what we try to do is sure that we keep, you guys always hear me at the committee say, keep people out of the large claim bucket, right? So keep doing as far as what you're doing with regards to the wellness program. But
Yeah.
So
and I think that I think when it came down to it, like it's another question that really comes down to understanding the self-funding piece and with the claims.
Mhm.
I don't know if other people is there any other I'm excited to know about the upcoming meeting. I feel like you've given a pretty good sneak peek of what that will be. Any other things that will I feel like we need to get, so many more people to join that meeting.
No, what I would say right now, what we're not seeing